Today, we're going to read Exodus chapter 13, verses 17 and 18. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, Lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. They were finally released from Egypt. This was a population of around maybe 3 million people, when you include children, maybe little infants also. When you consider everyone, not just the adult males, when you include everyone, it was around 3 million people, maybe a bit more. And the world's population back then was maybe around 30 million people. So they were like 10% of the world's population, the Israelites. So they went out from Egypt, orderly. They could have just went through the land of the Philistines directly. Let me show it to you. You can see here clearly that ancient Canaan was under the administration of Pharaoh. So when Egypt collapsed due to the 10 plagues and they went out from Egypt, they could have just, they could have followed the northern route and just, here they are, just bang, into the promised land right away. Instead, the Most High decided to lead them towards the Red Sea. Now, why would he do that? Let's read further. Exodus chapter 14, and let's read. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pihahirot, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baalzephon, before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, They are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made ready his chariot, and took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the hordes and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen, and his army, and overtook them, encamping by the sea, besides Pihahirot, before Baalzephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we would die in the wilderness. What? Oh, sorry, that what wasn't in the scripture. I'm just being shocked here. You should be shocked also. Let's read. Continue to read. And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more, forever. This is a double denial. This is an emphasis. You will never see them again. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. Listen, the Most High was not complaining against Moses. The Most High was telling him, construct the people. Moses was not the issue here. Moses had faith. The people, look at what they said. They said to Moses, didn't we tell you to leave us alone so that we can serve the Egyptians? It was better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness? Remember what we read before in the beginning of this video. The Most High did not want to lead them to the shortest route. Why? Because he knew that they had this way of thinking, this backwards way of thinking amongst them. And that when they would see war, they would return back. And look at this. It didn't even take long. Within several days after they left Egypt, they weren't even near the promised land. They were in the wilderness, and they noticed that Pharaoh was coming after them, and already changed their mind. They wanted to go back to Egypt. So here it became obvious why the Most High did not want to lead them through the shortest route. And here's the thing. When you read further, you know this story. He parted the Red Sea for them. They went through. And when Pharaoh and his armies did the same to pass through the Red Sea, he drowned them. So, what happened here was that God looked at the bigger picture. He sees everything, so he doesn't really have to look at something, but you get what I'm saying here. He saw that the Israelites would return to bondage when they faced resistance. He knew they had this wrong way of thinking, so he led them through a difficult landscape. And when they were in a difficult landscape, their enemies thought, okay, this is our chance to get them back. Because remember, the Israelites had all the money of Egypt. They had the wealth of Egypt with them. They were not just some peasants that were wandering around with dirty clothes. No, they became the richest nation on the earth overnight. And the Egyptians complied with it after the 10 plagues. Though the Egyptians were not happy that these people, whom they looked down upon, were now the richest nation on the earth. So when they were, quote unquote, trapped in the wilderness, at least that's what the Egyptians thought, they thought this is our chance to get back our wealth. Now, they went for it, and look at this. That was the trap that the Most High placed for the Egyptians, so that they would destroy themselves. So, after he destroyed the Egyptian military, there was no military threat anywhere on the earth against Israelites. And financially and economically, they were the number one nation on the earth. But look at this. Look at the attitude of the people, the attitude of unbelief. So you mean to tell me you witnessed 10 plagues? You became the richest nation on the earth overnight. But you still didn't trust the Most High? You were still holding on to the past? Look, the people here, they held onto the past. That's what they did. And because they held onto the past, they were in rebellion against the Most High. We read Exodus 14. Right now, let's read this again. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure people repent when they see war, and return to Egypt. Now they saw war when Pharaoh came after them, and he wanted to return to Egypt. They even told Moses, we told you to leave us alone. So they projected the blame on Moses. I want you to consider this. Moses walked by faith. There was no issue with Moses whatsoever. There was a big issue with the people collectively. Not all of them individually. Individually, there were those walking by faith amongst the people. But collectively, they were in unbelief. Here's why. They now had the riches of Egypt, which were now their riches. But they still held onto the idols of Egypt. They grew up with Egyptian gods. So they craved the reward of those Egyptian gods. Now they were serving the real God, the Most High himself, who made them rich without going through all those weird rituals that the Egyptians had to do. This was before the Greek Empire, but they still had those weird rituals back then already. Not the same rituals, but you get what I'm saying. So, God made them rich without them having to please Egyptian gods. The 10 plagues were plagues against the Egyptian gods. And the Egyptians held on to those gods when they suffered because of it. The Israelites were blessed. They were like 10% of the world's population. They were more numerous than the Egyptians themselves. So, looking at their situation, they should be the one rejoicing day and night. But they were relieved from Egypt, or not relieved. Hold on a minute, let me explain this. The Most High dealt with Egypt, so Egypt was gone. The Egyptian Empire back then, it was over. But the people were not delivered. Let me explain this. Didn't God lead them out of Egypt? Yes, He did. He led them out of Egypt. Physically, they were free from Egypt. Egypt didn't have to hold on to them physically anymore. But mentally, they held onto Pharaoh. Mentally, they held onto Egyptian society. So instead of surrendering to what God was doing, they hardened themselves, just like Pharaoh hardened himself. Pharaoh didn't want to let go. Pharaoh was holding on, but the Israelites, that generation, was also holding on. Because they were holding on, they could not receive what God had in store for them. They received the tools, which was the riches of Egypt, which was really brought to Egypt by Joseph a few generations before. So they couldn't see the bigger picture of what God was doing. God wanted to lead them to the promised land so they could take possession of the promised land so that they could become a blessing to everyone on the earth with their riches. That was a great plan the Most High had for them. But because they were holding on to the relief seeking of Egypt, they couldn't receive the life and abundance the Most High intended for them. I'm not even going to read all the passages, all the rest of the books that follow Exodus, because you'll get fed up with the attitude of the people. That generation passed away, and the other generation that was born during the wilderness, they took in the promised land, and the promise was fulfilled through them. They became the number one financially prosperous nation on the earth. And centuries that followed, all the ethnicities on the earth wanted to rob them. That's what the Old Testament is about. Just understand that God led them through the wilderness to reveal their idols, to reveal their relief seeking. And here's one thing I want you to understand. When God leads you through the wilderness, it is not directly related to sin or anything like that. Because when you're born again, you're born again. And when you're renewing your mind, you're renewing your mind. You're doing God's will. But not everyone around you is doing God's will. Not everyone around you has faith. Not everyone around you is born again. Too often, through life, we want to bring people with us. Friends, relatives, people that we have a bond with. And that's understandable. That's human to want that. When we have an advantage, we want to share it with them. But many of those people are just like those ancient Egyptians and ancient Israelites. They don't want to let go. They don't want to forfeit the relief seeking of the world. They don't want to do that. They don't want to examine things. They don't want to be mentally challenged. So just like those ancient Israelites, when they saw resistance, when they saw that things may become a bit difficult, they want to return. It's the same you have folks in your life. And just like they turned on Moses multiple times, they will turn on you also. So just like the Most High did with the ancient Egyptians, He will do with you. He will sometimes lead you into a difficult situation, not because of your fault. He does it to deliver you from certain people. Agree with Christ. Follow wherever He leads you. Be at peace.